Captivating and ethereal, Jean Simmons embodied a beauty that drew admiration from both the public and filmmakers. Her unique blend of innocence and mystique made her a perfect fit for Hollywood's golden age. Yet, behind this enchanting facade, lay a woman navigating a system where the word no was often not an option. The film industry, particularly during its mid-century peak, was dominated by men, leaving women vulnerable to manipulation, typecasting, and power struggles. Jean's journey transcends mere fame and glamour. It reveals the hidden costs of celebrity and the heavy burdens placed on women in an era that often prioritized their appearance over their artistry. Her life serves as a cautionary tale, illustrating the duality of being both desired and disempowered, highlighting the painful reality that beauty, when exploited, can become both a blessing and a trap. Jean Marilyn Simmons was born on January 31, 1929, in Lower Holloway, London, into a family that valued discipline and physical achievement. Her father, Charles Simmons, was a gymnastics instructor and an Olympic bronze medalist. This background instilled in Jean an early appreciation for movement and form, shaping her understanding of performance. As World War II intensified, young Jean faced the upheaval of being evacuated from London to Somerset. This significant disruption altered her life path. During these challenging years of wartime displacement, she discovered a passion for performing. She often entertained her peers with impromptu skits and dramatic readings, finding joy and solace in the world of theater. Although her childhood dream was to become an acrobatic dancer, reflecting her father's athletic legacy, these early performances revealed a deeper calling. The stage became her escape, showcasing her natural charisma and hinting at the iconic actress she would soon become. The tragic death of Jean Simmons' father, when she was just 16, created a void that would never quite be filled, but it also served as a catalyst for change. With this loss came a sense of urgency and a need to take responsibility not just for her future, but for her family's well-being. Jean's mother, recognizing her daughter's potential, supported her decision to enter the performing arts. This encouragement led Jean to enroll at the Ida Foster School of Dance, a respected institution known for producing stage and screen talent. What began as dance lessons quickly transitioned to acting, as her striking appearance and expressive demeanor caught the attention of film industry professionals. She was soon discovered by director Val Guest, who cast her in her first significant role, thus opening the door to a new and unplanned career. What had been an escape soon became her destiny, and Jean stepped into the film world with both promise and vulnerability. Her journey reflects the resilience of a young woman who turned personal tragedy into a path of artistic expression and success. Jean Simmons' rise in British cinema was meteoric. She appeared in small yet memorable roles in films such as Give Us the Moon and The Way to the Stars, where her subtlety and quiet intensity stood out even in ensemble casts. These early performances showcased her ability to convey emotion without theatrics, a trait that would become her hallmark. However, behind the camera, the atmosphere was not always professional or safe. At the age of 16, Jean encountered actor Stuart Granger, a charismatic and much older man who would play a pivotal role in her life. Though he admitted to being attracted to her, Granger kept his distance until she came of age. This interaction, while seemingly benign on the surface, reflected the often blurred and dangerous lines of power and attraction in the film industry, lines that many young actresses, including Jean, were forced to navigate in silence. These formative years were as much about surviving Hollywood's gaze as they were about building a resume. The challenges she faced during this time shaped her future and influenced her career choices. Jean's breakout moment came with her role in Black Narcissus in 1947, where she portrayed Conchi, a teenage native girl. This role required her to perform in heavy makeup designed to darken her skin, a practice known today as blackface. At that time, such casting choices were common, reflecting an industry steeped in colonial imagery and racial insensitivity. For Jean, who had little control over the role she was offered, this was a career-defining opportunity wrapped in cultural controversy. The film's critical and commercial success catapulted her into the spotlight, allowing her to gain the credibility needed to demand better roles. Around the same time, her relationship with Stuart Granger intensified. What had once been a restrained admiration evolved into a full-blown romance. They would eventually marry, but their relationship, like many in Hollywood, was complicated by ego, career pressures, and control. Jean, still very young, found herself tied to a powerful figure in the industry, which gave her visibility but also placed limitations on her freedom. Her personal and professional lives were becoming increasingly intertwined in ways that would shape the rest of her journey. Although Jean Simmons had already made a name for herself in British cinema, it was her role as Ophelia in Laurence Olivier's adaptation of Hamlet in 1948 that cemented her place as a world-class actress. At just 19 years old, she held her own opposite one of the most respected actors of the era, delivering a haunting and delicate performance that revealed the depth of her dramatic range. Her portrayal was nuanced, emotionally resonant, and undeniably mature, an achievement that earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. The nomination not only signaled critical recognition, but also marked her transition from ingenue to serious talent. However, this career milestone followed closely after her controversial role in Black Narcissus, which had left an uncomfortable legacy due to its use of racial caricature. In that film, Simmons had been made to wear dark makeup to portray a Himalayan girl, a decision made by producers in line with the prevailing racial biases and casting norms of the time. While her performance was praised, the role is now remembered as an example of how even talented actresses had little say in how they were presented, often being placed in roles that reinforce stereotypes. This juxtaposition, an Oscar nod for Hamlet, and critical backlash in retrospect for Black Narcissus, underscored the contradictions of her early fame. She was celebrated and exploited in equal measure. Following the success of Hamlet, Simmons' career trajectory continued to rise, and she was quickly regarded as one of the most promising young actresses in the British film industry. However, stardom did not come without personal cost. While shooting The Blue Lagoon in the remote islands of Fiji, Jean found herself in a harrowing situation that nearly cost her life. During a break in filming, she and her co-star Donald Houston were involved in a serious car accident on the island's narrow and unpaved roads. The incident shook the entire crew, especially Simmons, who was still only 18 and far from home. Despite the trauma, the studio refused to halt production for long. In a display of the industry's relentless focus on deadlines and profitability, Jean was expected to return to work almost immediately, with barely any time to recover emotionally or physically. This episode highlighted the pressure actresses were under, where personal safety and well-being were often secondary to the demands of the film schedule. Simmons, known for her professionalism, endured the ordeal quietly, but it was another reminder that her career was being shaped not only by talent and opportunity but by the systemic disregard for actresses' personal boundaries and health. The production of The Blue Lagoon aimed to highlight Jean Simmons' youthful beauty and charm, casting her as a castaway in a romantic survival story. However, the filming process was anything but simple. The location was harsh, remote, and humid, presenting numerous logistical challenges. In addition to the demanding environment, Simmons faced a serious car accident that added to her struggles. Despite this, the producers continued to push the shooting schedule forward, showing little concern for the physical and mental toll on the cast and crew. The conditions were grueling, and Simmons had to endure them with minimal support. While the film eventually became a popular success, the behind-the-scenes reality left a lasting impact on Jean. The accident was rarely mentioned in the media, overshadowed by promotional materials that depicted the experience as an exotic adventure. For Simmons, this was a painful reminder of how personal trauma could be overlooked in the pursuit of entertainment. Even with her suffering, she delivered a performance that further established her presence on screen, yet the emotional scars from the incident remained, subtly influencing her public persona. By the time Jean Simmons turned 21, her feelings for actor Stuart Granger became undeniable. Granger, who was 16 years older than Jean, had first met her when she was a teenager. He patiently waited until she reached adulthood to express his romantic interest. Their relationship, which had been the subject of much speculation in the film industry, finally led to marriage in December 1950. While the public viewed their union as a fairy-tale romance, it created significant concern among studio executives. At that time, Simmons was one of Britain's most marketable young stars, and studios had carefully crafted her image as an innocent young woman, leaving room for potential romantic pairings with other rising stars, particularly Dirk Bogarde. Marrying Granger, who was already a well-established actor, disrupted these carefully laid plans. The marriage, while meaningful to Jean and Stuart, posed challenges in the world of stardom. Jean could no longer be marketed as a romantic lead opposite younger actors, as her new status as a married woman conflicted with the image that producers had worked hard to create. This shift in her identity changed the dynamics of her career and the roles available to her. highlighting the tension between personal choices and professional expectations in Hollywood. Jean's marriage to Stuart Granger had significant implications that reached far beyond her personal life. It posed a direct threat to the carefully crafted promotional strategies that studios had developed around her image. The marketing narrative that paired her with Dirk Bogarde, a popular matinee idol, was crucial for the success of British cinema at that time. Studios had invested considerable resources in shaping public perception, suggesting a romantic relationship between Simmons and Bogarde to spark fan interest. However, her marriage disrupted this carefully constructed illusion. Complicating matters further, Bogarde was privately known to be homosexual, and any public revelation of this fact would have led to a scandal in that era. Therefore, Jean's real-life choice not only undermined the studio's romantic storyline, but also risked exposing other secrets that the industry was eager to keep hidden. As a consequence of deviating from the expected path of stardom, Simmons faced significant career repercussions. Her contract with the Rank organization was not renewed in full, leaving her vulnerable in an industry that thrived on control and conformity. This situation highlighted how closely Hollywood and the British film system monitored personal lives and retaliated against those who sought autonomy, particularly women. Jean's choice to follow her heart came at a steep price, sacrificing studio support and future security, a cost that many actresses face for simply exercising their personal freedom. Jean Simmons' marriage to Stuart Granger marked a significant turning point in her life and career. This union led her into the orbit of Howard Hughes, one of Hollywood's most powerful and controversial figures. Unbeknownst to Simmons, Hughes had secretly acquired her film contract from the Rank organization, a move that would drastically alter her professional trajectory. This acquisition was not just a routine business transaction. It highlighted the troubling reality of how much control studio heads had over actresses during that era. With this deal, Simmons lost her agency and found herself legally bound to RKO Pictures and to Hughes, who now held the reins of her career and, in many respects, her personal life. Hughes's obsession with Simmons's image and allure transformed her into a pawn in his elaborate game of power. The realization that her rising fame did not grant her freedom, but instead placed her under the control of a man who viewed her as property was a crushing blow. The promise of her international breakthrough became entangled in a complex web of manipulation, leaving her feeling trapped in a system that exploited beauty and silenced dissent. This experience underscored the harsh realities faced by many actresses of her time, revealing the darker side of Hollywood's glamour and the personal sacrifices made in the pursuit of success. When news of Howard Hughes's involvement finally reached Simmons, she understood that her marriage had triggered a retaliatory move from one of the most powerful men in the industry. Hughes had a well-documented history of using his influence to control and pursue young actresses, and Jean was now his latest fixation. With the ink still fresh on the contract, Hughes didn't hesitate to make his intentions clear. He began aggressively courting her, sending lavish gifts, and scheduling meetings under the pretense of career discussions. But Simmons was not interested, and worse, she was now legally trapped. Stuart Granger, fiercely protective of his wife, confronted Hughes in a now legendary phone call filled with rage and expletives, warning him to stay away from Jean. The confrontation reportedly ended with Hughes hanging up, humiliated but still dangerous. Granger's bold defense of his wife only seemed to deepen Hughes's obsession. For Simmons, the situation was both terrifying and disempowering. She was a rising star, now caught between two powerful men, one her husband, the other a studio mogul who saw her as a possession. Her arrival in Hollywood, once full of dreams, quickly turned into a psychological battleground. Jean Simmons's formal entry into the American film scene began with the biblical comedy Androcles and the Lion in 1952, a production that seemed uneventful at first glance. Simmons performed her role with grace and charm, adapting smoothly to the Hollywood style. However, beneath her professionalism, Howard Hughes was seething. Her rejection of his advances had wounded his ego, and he was not a man who handled rejection well, especially not from a woman he believed he could control. In retaliation, Hughes began to use his authority to undermine Simmons' career in subtle yet cruel ways. He weaponized her film assignments, choosing projects not based on artistic merit, but as tools of revenge. The true extent of his vengeance became apparent during her next assignment, a collaboration with director Otto Preminger on Angel Face in 1953. While the film would later be hailed as a noir masterpiece, the process of making it turned into a nightmare for Simmons. Hughes, still enraged by her defiance, gave Preminger explicit instructions to make her life miserable, creating a hostile work environment that tested her resilience and talent. The tension between Simmons and Hughes highlighted the darker side of Hollywood, where personal vendettas could overshadow artistic endeavors. This period marked a significant chapter in Simmons's career, showcasing her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of the film industry while maintaining her dignity and professionalism. The challenges she faced during this time would shape her future choices and solidify her reputation as a talented actress who could endure and rise above adversity. In Angel Face, Gene Simmons faced a role that required deep emotional intensity alongside Robert Mitchum. However, what should have been a rewarding experience turned into a nightmare of psychological torment. Under the direction of Otto Preminger, who was known for his harsh methods, Simmons endured a campaign of emotional and physical abuse. This was not merely a case of tough directing. It was a calculated effort to push her beyond her limits. Hughes, the producer, was fully aware of Preminger's brutal style and encouraged this torment. One scene required Mitchum's character to slap Simmons, a moment that in the hands of a caring director would have been handled with sensitivity. Instead, Preminger insisted on repeating the scene over 20 times, each time with increasing force. This relentless demand was not just about getting a performance, it was about humiliation. Simmons, trapped by her contract and the pressure of the situation, suffered greatly. Each take chipped away at her dignity, turning the set into a battleground of psychological warfare. The experience was not only physically painful, but also a deliberate attempt to break her spirit, teaching her harsh lessons about power and obedience. The scene that pushed everything to the brink involved Robert Mitchum being directed to slap Gene Simmons across the face. After several takes, it became evident to everyone on set that the emotional and physical damage was real. Simmons's cheek was visibly swollen, and she struggled to hold back tears. Otto Preminger, driven by directives from Howard Hughes and his own sadistic tendencies, insisted on yet another take. In a moment of unexpected defiance, Mitchum snapped. Known for his calm demeanor and disdain for Hollywood's hypocrisy, he walked over to Preminger and slapped the director across the face. The crew fell into shocked silence. Mitchum's act was not merely about Simmons, it was a stand against an industry culture that permitted such abuse in the name of art or ego. His actions immediately halted the harassment and sent shockwaves through the production team. This incident became legendary, marking a rare moment when someone intervened to protect a vulnerable colleague. While the slap did not erase the trauma Simmons had faced, it provided a glimmer of solidarity in an industry often marked by complicity. Mitchum's brief intervention offered Simmons a measure of justice and exposed the cruelty she had endured in silence. When Gene Simmons worked on the set of Angel Face, she faced severe abuse that highlighted the cruelty often found in old Hollywood. Directors, supported by powerful studio heads like Howard Hughes, acted without fear of consequences. This environment created a culture where actresses were vulnerable to mistreatment. In a pivotal moment, Robert Mitchum chose to defend Simmons by confronting director Otto Preminger. This act was not just about stopping a single incident, it was a bold statement against the ongoing abuse of actresses in the industry. Mitchum, known for his rebellious spirit, risked his own career by standing up to both Preminger and Hughes, showing that he would not tolerate such behavior. While his intervention provided Simmons with temporary relief, it did not alter the broader power dynamics at play. Simmons appreciated Mitchum's support, but she understood that this moment of solidarity was rare in an industry that often isolated and punished women for rejecting unwanted advances. The confrontation served as a brief respite in a long struggle against the pervasive culture of retaliation that actresses like Simmons faced. Refusing to submit to the advances of Howard Hughes had serious consequences for Gene Simmons. Hughes, known for his controlling nature, saw film contracts as a means to exert power over actors. In 1953, Simmons was being considered for the lead role in the film Roman Holiday, a romantic drama directed by William Wyler. This film was a significant opportunity for her, as it would allow her to star alongside Gregory Peck and establish herself as a leading lady in Hollywood. However, Hughes had other plans. He quietly intervened and blocked her from being loaned out for the project, effectively blacklisting her from a role that would become iconic. The part ultimately went to Audrey Hepburn, who was relatively unknown at the time. Hepburn's performance not only earned her an Academy Award, but also propelled her into international stardom. Simmons, despite her undeniable talent and charm, found her path to success obstructed, not due to a lack of ability, but because she stood firm against a powerful man. This situation highlighted the harsh realities of old Hollywood, where maintaining integrity often came with a steep price. Refusing to let Hughes dictate her future, Simmons took a bold and unusual step for a woman of her era. She filed a legal case to free herself from the oppressive contract that had come to symbolize her exploitation. The courtroom battle was emotionally and professionally draining. Hughes, with his vast resources and legal firepower, fought back aggressively, hoping to intimidate Simmons into compliance. But she persevered. Her husband Stuart Granger, who had already challenged Hughes privately, supported her through the ordeal. The eventual resolution was bittersweet. Simmons was granted her freedom, but only after agreeing to appear in a handful of films that Hughes handpicked as a final punishment. These films were mostly uninspired and forgettable, designed not to advance her career, but to fulfill contractual obligations. It was Hughes' last attempt to squeeze value from a woman he could no longer control. Although Simmons emerged victorious on paper, the court case, and the concessions she had to make, highlighted how even when women fought back, the system ensured they paid a price. After legally breaking from Hughes, Simmons hoped to rebuild her career on her own terms. However, Hollywood's memory was long, and its grudges were often cloaked in silence. Word spread quickly that she was difficult, a label commonly used to describe women who refused sexual advances or demanded agency. Despite her proven talent and international acclaim, Simmons found that prominent roles were harder to secure. Casting decisions, networking, and publicity opportunities began to dry up, not because of lack of ability, but because she had disrupted the power dynamic. The unspoken rules of the industry punished women who stepped out of line. For Simmons, who had always approached her career with grace and seriousness, this quiet blacklisting was a cruel twist. It exposed the deeply rooted requirement for actresses not only to perform on screen, but to please powerful men off-screen. Many women around her conformed in silence. Simmons, by contrast, had stood her ground, and the cost was her momentum in an industry that preferred compliance over character. As if industry retaliation weren't enough, Simmons also faced the corrosive effect of gossip and rumor. Her beauty, charm, and close working relationships with co-stars often fueled baseless tabloid stories, many designed to stir controversy or undermine her marriage. One particularly damaging rumor involved actor Richard Burton, whose own reputation as a charismatic and intense presence only fueled speculation. According to some accounts, Simmons and Burton grew close during a film project, prompting jealousy from Stuart Granger. The situation escalated to a breaking point when Granger, reportedly armed with a gun, confronted Burton in a hotel, demanding the truth. Though Simmons denied any affair and likely remained faithful, the damage was done. The mere suggestion of impropriety was enough to complicate her public image and private life. Hollywood's press machine thrived on scandal, and even falsehoods could stain a reputation permanently. For Simmons, navigating her roles as actress, wife, and woman became increasingly complex in a world where whispers could be as damaging as facts. While filming Guys and Dolls in 1955, Jean Simmons found herself under the direction of Joseph L. Mankiewicz, a director known for his sophisticated style and sharp wit. As they worked together, a deep emotional connection began to develop between them. Mankiewicz, unlike many men in Hollywood, treated Simmons with a blend of admiration and intellectual respect. This approach was refreshing for her, as it allowed her to feel valued for more than just her appearance. Simmons later reflected on their relationship, indicating that their feelings had grown beyond mere professional admiration. Although nothing scandalous was confirmed, their bond highlighted the often blurred lines between personal and professional relationships in old Hollywood. For Simmons, this was a complicated time. She was still married to Granger, and their relationship was strained. The affection she felt for Mankiewicz was genuine and contrasted sharply with her struggles at home. This emotional entanglement mirrored the confusion in her personal life, emphasizing how love, power, and ambition intertwined in a world where every emotion carried weight. During the production of Guys and Dolls in 1955, Jean Simmons found herself working with Joseph L. Mankiewicz, a director known for his sharp intellect and ability to draw out complex performances from his actors. For Simmons, who had faced emotional manipulation in previous roles, Mankiewicz represented a refreshing change. He treated her as an equal, recognizing her not just as a starlet, but as a thoughtful and feeling artist. As they collaborated on the film, their professional relationship blossomed into a deeper emotional connection. Although Simmons was married to Stuart Granger at the time, The distance in her marriage was becoming more pronounced. She later revealed that she and Mankiewicz developed mutual feelings during the filming, although they chose to keep their relationship discreet. This emotional bond was not merely a scandalous affair. It was a rare moment of genuine affection and mutual respect in an industry often marked by power imbalances. However, this closeness also brought challenges, blurring the lines between her artistic life and personal emotions, highlighting the struggles women in Hollywood faced in balancing their careers and personal lives. Despite her reputation as a consummate professional and a beloved colleague among male co-stars, Gene Simmons had a different demeanor toward women on set. This was particularly evident during the filming of The Egyptian in 1954, where tensions flared between Simmons and her co-star Bella Darby. Darby, a rising European actress with a troubled past and a complex relationship with studio head Daryl Zanuck, found herself at odds with Simmons. Reports suggest that Simmons was critical of Darby's acting skills and presence, often mocking her behind her back. This behavior created a chilly atmosphere, as Simmons refused to collaborate warmly with Darby. The reasons behind this tension could be attributed to professional jealousy, personality clashes, or the broader studio politics that often pitted women against each other. This feud revealed a more complex side of Simmons. While she had been a victim of male power structures, she also exhibited the internalized competitiveness and harshness that the system bred in actresses. In an industry where women were frequently judged by their appearance, alliances were rare, and rivalry became both inevitable and, at times, cruelly amplified. By the late 1950s, Simmons had firmly established herself as a prominent actress in Hollywood, yet her fame did not protect her from the intense demands of directors like William Wyler. During the filming of The Big Country in 1958, she faced the challenges of working under a filmmaker known for his relentless pursuit of perfection. Wyler's reputation for endless retakes and a meticulous approach to filmmaking created a stressful atmosphere for Simmons. The constant rewrites of the script and emotional manipulation left her feeling drained and frustrated. She was often required to perform the same scenes multiple times without clear explanations, which stifled her creativity and left her emotionally vulnerable. The pressure of the production took a significant toll on her mental health and highlighted issues in her marriage to Stuart Granger. Long hours on set, combined with a professional strain and growing emotional distance between them, pushed Simmons to her limits. This experience marked a critical moment in her life, illustrating the conflict between her successful career and the unraveling of her personal life, a struggle that Hollywood frequently overlooked. After years of emotional turbulence and professional stress, Gene Simmons' marriage to Stuart Granger ended in divorce in 1960. The separation was widely covered in the tabloids, but what drew even more attention was Simmons' quick involvement with director Richard Brooks, whom she had met while working on Elmer Gantry in 1960. Their connection was immediate and intense, blending personal attraction with shared artistic values. Brooks, a sharp-witted and highly driven director, recognized Simmons' depth and talent, and she, in turn, admired his commitment to meaningful storytelling. However, their relationship didn't escape scrutiny. The public and press were quick to suggest that Simmons had leapt from one powerful man to another, fueling gossip about her dependence on romantic attachments for career stability. What was often missed in these portrayals was the possibility that Simmons, weary from a toxic marriage and years of exploitation, found genuine companionship and creative freedom in Brooks. Still, their relationship, like her others, was framed by the entertainment industry's invasive gaze, where every personal decision was measured, judged, and repackaged as public intrigue. When Gene Simmons was cast in Stanley Kubrick's Spartacus in 1960, it marked a significant moment in her career, as it was seen as a prestigious return to epic filmmaking. However, behind the film's grand visuals lay a troubling episode of exploitation. For one particular scene, Simmons was required to spend long hours submerged nude in freezing water, enduring take after take in harsh conditions, all in the name of achieving cinematic perfection. While her male co-stars received relative care and respect, Simmons' physical endurance was pushed to its limits, and her discomfort was largely overlooked. This treatment revealed a chilling subtext: her insistence on maintaining personal boundaries in an industry that often demanded intimacy and submission was met with punishment. This experience was not an isolated incident, but rather a continuation of a troubling trend throughout Simmons' career. Her refusal to compromise her dignity led to public repercussions, highlighting the systemic mistreatment of actresses who sought to protect their own integrity in an environment that frequently sought to undermine it. The physical toll from the Spartacus shoot, compounded by years of emotional stress and unrecognized trauma, illustrated the harsh realities faced by women in the film industry. By the mid to late 1960s, Jean Simmons' once thriving career had begun to fade, not because her talent had diminished, but because the industry had little room for women who aged out of ingenue roles and refused to play the Hollywood game. She had spent over 2 decades navigating rejection, abuse, and public scandal, and the emotional residue began to manifest in her personal life. Insiders whispered that Simmons had turned to alcohol as a form of coping, a way to dull the pain and suppress years of unmet emotional needs and unresolved trauma. Her marriage to Richard Brooks, though initially loving, began to suffer under the strain of these internal battles. Hoping to save their relationship and perhaps reignite Simmons' passion for storytelling, Brooks cast her in The Happy Ending, a film about a woman disillusioned with the reality of marriage and aging. The role was deeply personal, mirroring Simmons' own life with haunting accuracy. She delivered a brave and vulnerable performance, earning critical praise and a second Oscar nomination. Yet, the line between character and actress was thin, and the film felt more like a cry for help than a triumphant comeback. For Simmons, art and life had finally fused, beautiful, tragic, and achingly real. By the late 1960s, the emotional toll of Jean Simmons' long career became evident. After years of being manipulated and mistreated in the film industry, she found herself struggling with personal issues that affected her professional choices. The pressure from public scrutiny and the weight of internalized pain led to a growing dependency on alcohol. In this context, The Happy Ending, released in 1969 and directed by her then-husband Richard Brooks, emerged as a deeply personal project. The film blurred the lines between fiction and reality, as Simmons played a character whose seemingly perfect life was unraveling. This role mirrored her own struggles, making the film a poignant reflection of her life. Critics responded positively, and Simmons received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, applauding her raw and honest performance. However, the film's true significance lay in its ability to reveal her inner turmoil. Following its release, Simmons had to confront her addiction, facing the reality behind the glamorous facade of Hollywood for the first time in decades. Recognizing that she could no longer carry the weight of her trauma alone, Jean Simmons took a courageous and self-directed step toward healing by checking herself into rehabilitation. At a time when addiction in the entertainment industry was still stigmatized and rarely addressed openly, Simmons' decision to seek help was a bold declaration of self-preservation. Her time in rehab was not only a physical recovery, but also a spiritual and emotional reckoning. She began to peel back the layers of silence, shame, and disappointment that had built up over the years. Emerging from treatment, Simmons approached her career with new clarity. In the 1980s, she embraced a different kind of acting, no longer the ingenue or the carefully curated screen beauty, but the mature woman with stories to tell and experiences to draw from. Rather than chase youth, she leaned into depth. The shift was not only evident in the roles she accepted, but in the way she carried herself, calm, self-aware, and finally, unapologetically in control of her narrative. Simmons' triumphant return came with her performance in the 1983 television miniseries The Thorn Birds, in which she played Fiona Cleary, the stoic and emotionally distant matriarch of a troubled family. The role was a far cry from the youthful romantic characters that had once defined her. Fiona was complex, repressed, and burdened by secrets, a character that required restraint and emotional precision. Simmons' portrayal was masterful, deeply layered, and quietly devastating. Her performance earned her the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Limited Series or Special in 1983, cementing her status not just as a comeback story, but as a force in dramatic television. For Simmons, the Emmy was more than just a career milestone. It was validation that she no longer needed to rely on her appearance or conform to a narrow archetype. She had proven that substance could eclipse style, and that an actress could grow stronger, more compelling, and more relevant with age. It marked a second act built not on illusion, but on authenticity. Later in life, Simmons spoke candidly about the often cruel realities of aging as a woman in the film industry. She acknowledged that Hollywood's obsession with youth created a brutal cycle where actresses were elevated for their looks and then discarded as they matured. "Younger women will always come along," she once remarked, not with bitterness, but with clarity. She understood that longevity in the industry didn't come from resisting age, it came from adapting, evolving, and embracing roles that offered depth instead of glamour. Simmons had watched generations of actresses struggle with this transition, some fading away entirely, others desperately clinging to the past. Her own survival came from her willingness to move beyond vanity and into truth. Whether portraying flawed mothers, weary lovers, or introspective women facing change, Simmons used her later performances to explore emotions she had once been denied on screen. Her reflections weren't just insightful, they were empowering. She became a voice of wisdom in an industry that often silenced women once they passed a certain age. Navigating the complexities of Hollywood, Jean Simmons' story serves as a powerful reminder of the challenges faced by women in the film industry. Her experiences reflect a broader narrative of vulnerability and resilience, showcasing how the allure of fame can often come with significant sacrifices. The pressures to conform to societal expectations and the constant demand for approval can overshadow genuine talent and creativity. As Jean's life unfolded, it became clear that the glamour of the silver screen often masked a harsher reality, where saying no could lead to dire consequences. This cautionary tale emphasizes the importance of recognizing the hidden struggles behind the glitz and glamour, urging future generations to advocate for their own voices and choices. By understanding Jean's journey, we gain insight into the ongoing fight for equality and respect in an industry that continues to evolve. Her legacy encourages us to reflect on the true meaning of success and the importance of empowerment in the face of adversity. As we wrap up our exploration of Jean Simmons' illustrious career, it's time to dive into a special bonus segment that highlights one of her most iconic roles. Get ready to journey back to 1948, a year that brought us a cinematic gem, the film adaptation of Shakespeare's timeless tragedy, Hamlet. In this captivating rendition, Simmons portrays Ophelia, a character whose tragic arc and emotional depth resonate powerfully throughout the narrative. Her performance is not just a portrayal, it's a haunting embodiment of love, madness, and despair that leaves an indelible mark on the audience. The film itself, directed by the legendary Laurence Olivier, is celebrated for its stunning visuals and profound interpretation of the classic play, making it a must-see for both Shakespeare enthusiasts and film lovers alike. Join us as we delve deeper into the unique elements of Hamlet and explore how Jean Simmons' portrayal of Ophelia stands out in the annals of cinematic history. You won't want to miss this intriguing look at a film that beautifully intertwines artistry and emotion, showcasing Simmons at her finest. The 1948 film adaptation of Shakespeare's Hamlet, directed by and starring Laurence Olivier, has garnered a range of opinions, reflecting both admiration and critique. Many viewers praise it as a phenomenal adaptation of Shakespeare's masterpiece, highlighting Olivier's ability to capture the essence of the play's complex themes, particularly those of death and legacy. The film's exploration of these themes resonates deeply with audiences, as it delves into Hamlet's existential musings and the weight of his actions. However, some critics argue that the film is not a faithful adaptation of the original text. They point out that certain key elements, such as the characters Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, are omitted. These characters traditionally serve to illuminate Hamlet's darker side, particularly in the context of his ruthless decision to have them killed. While their absence is noted, many viewers feel that Olivier's portrayal still conveys a sense of darkness and moral ambiguity. The film captures Hamlet's brutal confrontation with his uncle and his haunting reflections on mortality, encapsulated in his poignant question, "How long will a man lie on the earth ere he rot?" One of the film's standout features is its visual storytelling, particularly in the final sequence. The imagery of Hamlet being carried on the shoulders of soldiers serves as a powerful symbol of his legacy, reinforcing the idea that he will be remembered long after his death. This regal and heroic portrayal contrasts sharply with earlier moments in the film, where Hamlet's indecision and emotional turmoil are evident. The cinematography effectively transitions through significant locations in Elsinore, such as the prayer room and his mother's bedroom, each evoking memories of Hamlet's struggles and growth. The film's conclusion is particularly striking, as it encapsulates Hamlet's journey from a state of despair to one of purpose. The lingering shots of Ophelia's pansies and the darkly lit imagery of Hamlet ascending to the tower serve as metaphors for his enduring legacy. Critics note that this ending is a fitting tribute to a character who has grappled with the fear of death throughout the narrative. In this adaptation, Hamlet ultimately conquers that fear as his story and memory will live on, ensuring he is never forgotten. In summary, the 1948 adaptation of Hamlet is a complex and multifaceted interpretation of Shakespeare's work. While it may not adhere strictly to the original text, it successfully captures the play's core themes and presents a visually compelling narrative. The film's ability to evoke deep emotional responses and provoke thought about legacy and mortality makes it a significant contribution to the cinematic portrayal of Shakespearean